No matter how many challenges you face, you still got through basic training. Like you still did the hardest thing that most people don't do. So hold on to that and know that will never leave you. That courage, so no matter where you're at, if you want to go ahead and figure that out, like your team is still with you, maybe it's different organizations, maybe you can reach out, but just to not give up and to ask questions.
That's good.
And just to rock with it and just go with the flow.
Yeah,
And
go
healing
with the
isn't
flow.
linear, man.
One of my biggest things in the military, one of my biggest things in life, just as Tanya Oxendine, and then Tanya Griffin, and now Tanya Oxendine again. I've been
That's always
3-4 people.
Jessica 90.
But my biggest downfall for me, because I'm very self-aware, I know who I am, and it was independent. I was fiercely independent. Fiercely independent, so much so it almost cost me my life, so much so that it almost could have cost me my career, you know, a little bit, but I was so independent, and I'll never forget. Do you know that independent means doing it alone, going solo, all by yourself? Again, I got tired of being on that island by myself. What I needed was interdependence.
Absolutely.
I needed a team. I needed some people to be around me. My sons, I had to tell them what was going on. I needed to reach out to friends and tell them what's going on. They had no idea. Girl, you living it, you know, smiling on the outside, struggling on the inside. I very rarely use that word when describing, because I don't want to be that anymore. It's so independent. I need the interdependence. I need the team to come in and help me. The Wounded Warrior Project was part of that team, right? When I asked for help and actually were recommended to me. So what was you guys' experience with the physical health and wellness part, the mental health?
I remember back in 2005, I was just starting graduate school, and I was still angry that I was in the military for 23 months and lost my arm. And so I received a phone call, and it was somebody from Wounded Warrior Project, and they said, hey, we're having a bike event, come to Chicago, ride through, and do you want to participate? And I said, how the heck am I supposed to participate? And I got one damn arm. And he said, oh, we got adaptive bikes and this and that. And I said, I don't even own a bike, let alone, I don't even know how to ride a bike anymore. So back then he said, hey, go to your local bike shop and put me on the phone and we'll have them build you a custom bike.
Wow.
And so they built me a custom bike where the brakes were on the right-hand side. And I had a prosthetic with I don't know if it had a hook, but it was a bike device.
Okay.
So I look at that soldier ride, this multi-day cycling event, as my homecoming. Because when you get off the C-130 from theater, you know, combat.
C-130.
The C-130,
the airplane.
thank you,
Yeah.
the airplane.
The big old plane.
Big old
Air Force here, big
There's
old plane.
no parade. People celebrating your
right.
accomplishments. You come back
home
home
and
with a hospital gown and they're taking you off to the next surgery. So when I participated in this biking event, I felt like that was my homecoming because we're riding through Chicago. I'm from Chicago. You see the flags and everybody saying thank you for your service. And that was the first time I felt like, you know, I could pat myself on the chest that, you know, I did not lose. I should not be shameful about what happened to me, because I was always trying to
ride
cover.
a doggone bike.
I got to ride a bike.
Right.
I felt the wind in my face. I was with other veterans. I was connecting with not only the city folks, but other warriors. And that was my springboard event to like other adaptive events. And so for me, I just smiled because it was wonderful just to get up and do something.
That's amazing.
different.
So I guess my springboard event to Wounded Warrior Project, I don't know if it was an event, but remember I said I was on the verge of driving off that bridge and went to Fort Belvoir Hospital, Fort Belvoir, Virginia, and going through therapy for a couple of years. And one of my doctors said, have you ever heard of Wounded Warrior Project? No, and you hear Wounded Warrior, you don't think that applies to you.
Yep.
Right, you think it's somebody, you know, like
Exactly,
just has
exactly.
a visible amputee or maybe burned or blind or something. And I was like, no, wounded, but no, it applies to me, to those who have the invisible wounds, like the post-traumatic stress disorder, traumatic brain injury, and military sexual trauma, and so many other things, and knee problems I have, and all this other stuff.
Right.
So, got the number, or however I got the number, she put me in contact, Dr. Benavidez, won't forget her name, Dolce Benavidez, and got in contact with them, or they got in contact with me, and I got invited to a week's retreat, mental health retreat, which is known as Project Odyssey, right? An all women's retreat. Ain't doing nothing with a whole bunch of women. Don't want to hear it, don't want to be around a whole bunch of, that's not what I'm gonna do. I'm comfortable around the men, take me back to the 82nd Airborne Division.
Right.
Finally said, yes, I'll go, because she kept asking me, and thank goodness I did. Because when I tell you what an amazing event, just like this now, suffering alone, right? Smiling on the outside and suffering on the inside.
Yep.
And everybody there, not to say it was suffering, but we had some of the same things. Like we were talking about, they're going through the menopause, or we had children, adult kids, and was feeling this way and that. And we celebrated each other. And we got to do this thing for an entire week.
Wow.
Where we had these different exercises and team building exercises. We went out and, some women in the military, some like you, had gotten out, for whatever reason, they wanted a long career.
Right.
And some had 20, like me had 30, or some had, 23 months in that. The first time they had done the obstacle course in a while. And all of us cheering each other on, and that interdependence and the teamwork. We went to this waterfall, and I'm all hardcore. And, I'm going to waterfall. And I'm boo-hoo crying because I'm saying I relate so much. Just the nature, and just to be around my sisters, and this. You're talking about an amazing event. You really can't. Then we got to sit on the campfire and do all these other things, and go on nature walks and just talk. And then
That's
it wasn't
awesome.
woe is me, it was just women connecting. And that was my introduction to Wounded Warrior Project. And one thing led to another with, the talk program. I got a phone call every week from a gentleman named Seneca at Wounded Warrior Project. And he didn't play.
Yeah.
I didn't want to talk. He didn't talk either. He just would listen to me breathe.
What year are you?
That was what year?
What you did the talk program?
20. Let me see. I was in Atlanta, so it was 20.
Yeah,
I have to go back to
I just
where I
want to
was
bring
at.
a point up.
Yeah, it was 18, 19-ish.
So I just want to talk about the progression of Wounded Warrior Project. They didn't have all those wonderful programs back then.
Yeah.
So the biking event and the connection, that was what it was about, just getting together, having dinner. So to hear from 2004 to what year?
2018. 18, 19.
Yeah, how much the program has just grown to your experiences.
Well, and I've been around with Wounded Warrior Project probably 2011 maybe. So I've utilized almost every single aspect of a program. I just needed practical applications of life. I needed help with the budget. I needed to make my 15 cents last all month long. I needed to figure that out.
You had more month than money.
Yeah, so I had 7 months and 15 cents. And we had to figure out how to make it work. And then I had all this massive debt from my divorce. And I had lost a house, and I had no credit, and I was just so stuck in a hole. And I just was like, I just need the basics. So I had the financial program, I got linked up, and it was just because I was very embarrassed. Because I was I left this particular socioeconomic status, come home in my little dress blues and visit, and I felt better. And then here I am humbling myself in this same exact space. So there was a lot of shame in my inability to keep my money together. So that was one of the programs. So that really helped me with the budget. And then it was a therapist on the phone to help me with very simple life things. Because I also during this time had a traumatic brain injury, I had a brain aneurysm, and I had to relearn how to learn. So I really was struggling, and I wasn't necessarily getting the help that I needed through my healthcare.
The traditional medical model.
Well, just the traditional medical model. And so it was a financial wellness, it was the nutrition program, it was the coaching program, it was because I had some neuromuscular differences, it was going to the physical health and wellness weekends, and we got out there and we trained with the NFL. It was functional training, and I was oh, even as a yoga teacher, this is gonna be great for my balance. And then even though it wasn't like the weekend retreat that I went on, and that was amazing. It wasn't for like mental, all these different events. They just help your mental health.
They just
do.
help.
They help
They
your
enhance it.
They
and-
enhance it. Even
yes.
a financial person being
Yeah,
non-judgmental, as I'm like thoroughly embarrassed by
Yes.
my debt, and like I can't even talk to that with anybody because then people start asking me questions. How'd you get there? Don't
But
know. We're
about
here.
you talk about the right people in the right positions at one
Absolutely.
because you know,
Yep.
girl, if you don't pay your bills on time, I couldn't
Right.
do that. But they got the right
and the
people
programming.
and the right,
See,
yes.
so when we first got injured back in 04, 05, whatever, it was about education. We got to educate. Our veterans are coming back. They need
Right.
education.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, we're getting older now. Okay, warriors to work. We got to get
Yes.
jobs. We got to learn
Thank
how to,
you.
we need skills.
Thank
we need
you.
the soft skills. And so their programming is based on our
what
needs,
the
based
needs
on
are.
those annual
So what
surveys.
what may have been 5 years ago may not be there based on the needs. But
Exactly.
then you've added 3 more programs.
and they
Exactly.
shift and
based on the
change,
needs.
and that's why
And
like
that is
the
such an
warrior
amazing
survey
thing.
to me, that's what, because like even though so chaplain assistants, we're supposed to be the eyes and ears of the morale of the base. That's pretty much our existence. So we do needs assessments and needs surveys all the time. From the depths of my heart, that's what I love about Wounded Warrior Project is every
they hear
year,
us, they listen.
every year they're gonna ask the questions, and then they just don't ask the questions and then not do anything about it. They do anything about
Right.
it. And to everyone's point about like taking time, I'm so proud of my organization because I've been asking for a lot of the women's issues changes every single year.
Yeah.
And every single year it's being chipped away at and it's being done and it's being done. Same thing with like caregivers and even like children and families. And so for whatever veteran you are on your life cycle, wherever you're at, there is something that they can help you with. And if they can't help you, they will send you an email with about 6 other organizations
yeah.
that can help you.
What would
I
you?
love
What would
us.
be your words to women, and not just women, but just to our fellow veterans and warriors?
Well, I think no matter what you experienced while you served, just know that by the simple act of you volunteering to be in the military, you already show great fortitude, courage, strength, and intelligence. So just to know that never leaves you, no matter, some people get very beat up, no matter how many challenges you face. You still got through basic training. Like you still did the hardest thing that most people don't do. So hold on to that and know that that will never leave you. So no matter where you're at, if you want to go ahead and figure that out, there's like your team is still with you. Maybe it's different organizations. Maybe you can reach out, but just to not give up and to ask questions.
That's good.
And just to rock with it and just go with the flow. And
Yeah, go
healing
with the
isn't
flow.
linear, man.
What about you, Danielle?
I was just thinking. I was thinking about numbers in my head. How there are 16 million veterans, countrywide, and there's 2 million female veterans. And so I would tell somebody, you're part of the few, few that have donned the uniform. And like Jessica said, you went through basic training, you got through AIT and telling if we got special forces and Delta and all those
Right.
strong people, that's still in you.
That's it.
You might have lost a limb, you might have,
Been
got
depressed.
TBI, you might have PTSD, but that is still
Yep.
part of your core. Don't accept the title of broken and damaged,
Yeah.
or abused or,
Yeah.
using the system. So with that being said, a lot has changed in 20 years. I mean, I'm proof of that.
Absolutely.
You don't have to do this alone.
Yeah, that's it. You don't have to do
You
it
don't
alone.
have to do
You
it
don't.
alone.
You don't.
If it's not Wounded Warrior Project or the Department of
Something else.
Veterans
It could
Affairs,
be
there's
so-
50 other
that's
or
right.
100 other
Yeah.
organizations out
That-
there.
That could be
But
your fit.
That could
That
be
could-
your
yeah.
fit.
Right, get in where
So
you fit in.
ask for help, get connected, get reconnected, and have a battle buddy. Even in the
Yeah.
civilian world,
Yeah.
have a battle buddy.
Yeah, yeah.
So.
Yeah, I just so much thoroughly enjoyed our conversation, our time together, and I'm just like you said, it wasn't your what is it, life thing is, when you met death is what do you call it?
Mortality?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it wasn't-
life will not give you a second chance. It will not give you a second chance, but will give you a fresh start.
Yes.
Yes. New
A
starts.
fresh start to find new ways of healing and a fresh start to live life brilliantly. Yeah.